about our last discussion on recruiting students. What we're going to do with that information is I'm going to go back through the video and document as many of the comments and things that were brought up and get that up on the website in some form or another. And I'm looking for some feedback on how to do this, because I want feedback, ideally from everybody here who's using the information, as to how to make it better, your experience with it, help put more in there so we can modify it over time and make it more of a resource for people to go to be able to help them out with recruiting students. And in this case, we're going to be talking about recruiting faculty, and I'd like to do the same thing with that. So if you have ideas, pull me aside later on during dinner or something like that. But so recruiting faculty, that's what we want to kind of cover right now. And you know, I'm going to start out like I did last time. We just talk about what my feeling at this time is and what I've been seeing that we've been doing, and then open it up for a discussion about the ways you have addressed it. And now we want to try to do this relative to BAS faculty, and while we're just in the beginning process of looking at that aspect, we have some thoughts of how we're going to do some of that, so I'm going to cover that right now. First of all, I got to think about full-time versus adjunct. You know, Rich brought up about how he's just a one-person shop. You know, and Jen, I imagine you're just
I'm
a
a
one-person
one-person shop, yeah.
So I'm a one-person shop for my Sustainable Facility Operations program. So that creates a problem. So we have an adjunct we need to bring in and help us out from time to time. So there's that issue of full-time versus adjunct. And I don't know, I mean, at MATC, for whatever reason, we tend to pay part-time people a fraction with no benefits of what we pay full-time people. To try to do that, to get qualified people in who can really do a good job at passing along the information to our students for peanuts is a difficult thing. So that's one thing we want to kind of bounce around and figure out, how can we accomplish this. I know the one instructor that I'm considering, I don't know that the college will consider, that I'm considering for potential for full-time in this area, he's doing things part-time right now with the thought that I think eventually he'd like to go into full-time. And so we probably all experience that with a lot of instructors where they're thinking, you know, if I just get in there part-time right now, I can open up the door, pry it open so I can be there full-time. So that's one way of trying to accomplish that. The level of pay is really such a big issue. And I've come across this just myself, where I took, it depends on how you want to look at it, anywhere from a $30,000 to $50,000 cut in pay to go teach. And I know, I'm pretty damn stupid. That's the way it goes. To do this, you have to make some adjustments to it. So how do we compensate for that? How do we get the proper pay level for instructors in this BAS area? Because as I mentioned, I think I mentioned earlier, we have people out in the California area where they're easily into the $100,000 range as a BAS tech. Granted, they're the higher end of it, but those are people we want teaching classes, right? As a general rule. So how do we compete with that? How do you compete with that?
One other question, I mean, because everybody I talk to about being an instructor, their biggest fear, you know, most of them are aiming for retirement, so they're just looking for a part-time job anyway.
Right.
But their biggest fear is, I've never instructed before. How do I, you know, what kind of training or ways of bringing in an adjunct instructor to make them comfortable is going to give them the desire to want to take that step into, you know, being in front of a room full of people?
I'll tell you how I do that. I co-teach with them. They're the instructor of record, and I donate my time because I see quality in the individual. I donate my time to get them involved in teaching at the level I hope that they can teach to. So it's a matter of hand-holding, basically. And so you're co-teaching, so they see you, how you interact with people, and then you watch them give them pointers.
Yeah,
So-
mentoring is a huge part.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I think that's a big point with a lot of people, it's my.
Yeah, but not everybody's willing to do that. So that's one way of doing it. We have, for instructors, adjuncts who come in, they have to go to be certified if they're going to stay teaching at MATC. So they start taking what we call the Big Distance 7. So that's another way to help bring them up to snuff, is to have them go through these classes that are targeted towards tech college instruction, learn all Bloom's taxonomy and a bunch of other areas. So there's that secondary component, but really I think a lot of the learning is just being able to work with that individual so they understand what's needed in the classroom. So that's one thing. So level of pay, critical skill sets for BAS instructors. Ideas?
IT instructors.
IT instructors, get an IT instructor in that area. Then we start facing the issue about their level of understanding of mechanical equipment. That's always a concern.
If it's adjuncts, it's usually somebody from the industry that's, I mean, they have to have this, they have to have the background in control rooms and be teaching the thing, so that's the biggest pool you've got.
Yeah. So then we're thinking about going to the local suppliers or vendors or contractors in the area, the AL's Automated Logic, or the Siemens, or the Johnson Controls, or maybe some of the big management companies like CBRE. And that's actually where I'm thinking about drawing somebody from, is from a company that was just bought out by CBRE in our area, and grabbing him and hoping that, well, first of all, we're going to try to grab him with it. That's our first intent. See if we can have some instructors who are already on staff with MATC and use them. And this other person we're thinking about, he's adjunct right now, so he's teaching part-time, and we might be able to bring him in pretty easily.
How about Alma?
BOMA, yeah, BOMA's another good source for that, I think.
Those are degree persons working as building operators, and so they have at least that knowledge and experience, maybe not directly in certainly the HVAC, but in the, from a building automation and controls and building management perspective.
So now, we went from recruiting from local companies or national companies to looking at associations, because BOMA's an association. And I think that that's another really rich source for us to grab from. I would think that if the need's there, you could go to some of those, we have local chapters, energy engineers in Wisconsin, called the Wisconsin Association of Energy Engineers, and they probably have somebody within their ranks that would fit the bill for that. So going to associations is another good source, I think, to try and find some instructors. Anybody have some experience with doing that?
I have one more for that group. I go to my local union and recruit retired union.
Ah, okay.
And the sheet metal guys and the HVAC contractors and gentlemen like that. People that are teaching I need people that can teach. They don't need the income, but they're concerned about the outcome.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would twist that a little bit, is we should be first focused on people who are concerned about the outcome, and then figure out that compound about the money.
They do it for free.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, that's good, free, okay. So that brings up another area, we'll talk about that. We'll get there.
Has anybody tried getting partners, especially with like building or BAS technicians, finding the company in your area that needs technicians the worst and trying to talk them into loaning you one of their technicians, for 8 hours a week in 2 4-hour periods, something like that?
I had not thought about it from that perspective, but I have thought about it, and I'm kind of tapping on what John said, which is similar thought process here, where you bring in guest speakers. This is one area that I intend to leverage in my program, is to basically find people to come in and talk in the class about what they do, how they do it, and provide students more rounded education. And I think, John, you mentioned it earlier, somebody else mentioned it earlier, where you, by doing that, you're showing them different opportunities. Maybe it was Gerald said that. You bring in these people that have these different experiences. That, you know, and quite honestly, to my students, since Jen's experience, she's the only person in, or the only full-time person in her area. I'm the only full-time person. I don't think my students want to listen to only Ted. You know, it gets a little bit boring after a while. So.
How did you talk about beer?
All right.
I was just gonna say, we've done that at our school. What, I think it was, not Brian. Robert was talking about, and we kind of took it a step further. In our police and fire academy, if we bring in industry folks to teach, and then rather than pay them, if their employer pays them, we take that money and put it into our foundation as a scholarship, so that when they send somebody to the class, there's money set aside for that. So while they're, you know, paying for their person to teach for us, they also see the benefit come back in the form of money being put into a foundation.
Yeah.
We've talked about doing that in some other programs, trying to expand that. We haven't gotten to that critical point yet to like, oh my God, we absolutely have to have somebody. But we do have a model for it, and our union and our administration's been open to talk about that.
I'd like to find out more about that, because for us, we would not have the ability to take that money for that instructor and divert it to foundation because somebody's donating their time. It just wouldn't work that way.
Yeah, I don't know how they worked it out with our faculty contract and whatnot, but.
Yeah, it just sounds like.
Because they're not
something very
donating their time, they're being paid. They're, you know, if it's, you know, Lansing City police officer.
Yeah.
Lansing City is paying him to be there and teach
Right.
for us. So nobody is working as a donation or for
Yeah.
free. That money
Yeah.
is just being, from our aspect, we're paying the foundation as opposed to paying the individual, because
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
so.
From the word to recruit from this, you know, the person that I'm going to discuss probably falls in one of those three, but former students. So, you know, we have a long-standing relationship.
Yeah.
We go back as far as 20 years with some of our students. And, you know, we keep in contact with them, we communicate with them, and so, you know, we still exchange information. And so, you know, looking back to them, you know, as they move up through the industry, and, you know, and we put the bug in our students' ears, and, you know, when they graduate and say, you know, one of these days, you might be doing what I do.
Yeah.
So, you know, prepare yourself.
Now, that's a really good idea, and I actually had an example of that where I had a student, she just really impressed me. And I thought, wow, you know, and she's really thinking in broad terms, and thinking maybe eventually a bachelor's degree and master's degree. I'm thinking, myself, looking at her, the way she presents herself and everything, you know, you keep that up. I want you in front of our classes, because she's going to meet a lot of diversity requirements too. That it's like, wow, how it's a great way. But throughout a cruise population, it's going to better match what our students are.
Right, but not only impress, you know, not only have students impress you, but you, the faculty member, leave such an impression upon the student that
Yeah.
they say, hey, you know, this is something that I might want to do in the future.
Yeah.
You know, because this person has impacted me, so I want to do that, you know, to somebody else.
I think it's a good idea.
My best adjuncts were former students of mine.
Oh, really?
And the times I've been burned is when I have hired from outside.
Wow. Interesting.
Ted, I was just thinking that as far as the level of pay, it just occurred to me, you know, that we just hired a adjunct faculty for our BAS. He works for a company called Sunbelt, which is a big controls company back there. And it seems to me that if I went to the guys at Sunbelt and said, hey, we hired your guy, he's not gonna make as much teaching as you pay him. Could you maybe supplement the difference? And the advantage to you is, he's gonna be in the class, he's gonna see the best people, and he can tell you about the best
Well, that's
folks.
an interesting concept.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that one.
Well, you know, Ted, we've had some luck hiring retirees or semi-retirees. The only issue with them, they can get testy sometimes, and their nerves are shot.
Where you going, boss?
But we hire from industry, and the guys are just exceptionally busy. That's the problem with BAS. You know, they have a 6 o'clock class, and maybe they show up at 7. We're glad they came.
Yeah.
It's a real issue.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to be driven by their own zeal for the topic.
Yeah.
I mean, that passion is critical.
I mean, I personally think we need to change the way the industry is operating. They have to begin to see that it's in their best interest to partner with us.
Yeah. Well, you know, it kind of goes back to this apprenticeship type of mentality. How do we get them to think more in terms of apprenticeships, and in terms of teaching the people they hire, which would go back to what your comment is, let their people who are in the field and already doing well come and help teach this.
You know, the other thing that I was thinking about is the responsibility of teaching a class is not small.
No.
And so to take that on is a big deal. So, like you said, you help mentor your,
Yeah.
but what if it was more than that? It was more of a permanent thing where we do hybrid classes, and I've talked to my dean about it. I said, let him do the lab. It's not nearly as long as the lecture and the lab. I'll do the lecture part, put it online, that's all there, and I can take care of that part for him, and he just needs to show up and do the magic that he does. And
Yeah. Yeah, and
split up the load a little bit so he doesn't have to take all of that on.
yeah, I think we have a mechanism that's similar to that where we could basically put 2 instructors on 1 class. I've never done it, but I've heard other classes doing that.
Split the class.
You split the class.
My dean doesn't like it.
Well, the problem there is continuity.
To heck with the dean.
I know. That's my motto.
The issue is continuity. You know,
Yeah.
if they can communicate or find time to communicate,
Mhm.
it could work.
And that would be part of the vetting process, right? The first class. So,
You know, something I was just mentioned about the requirements and whether or not they can do it. We put on a few months ago a adjunct faculty recruiting event at our college for our skill division. And we ran it just like almost like a college job fair, except for we wanted them to learn about what it means to teach within at LCC. We blanketed, I mean, we really had our people push it to their networks, you know, professional, personal networks. And then that night we had somebody come in and talk about online applications. And, you know, for a lot of these folks, they may have not done an application for a long time. The director for IT for the state of Michigan got bumped out of our hiring system as unqualified to teach IT as an adjunct, because he just didn't put some stuff on his application in the right place.
Yeah.
So we had somebody there talking about, you know, how to apply, you know, online applications.
That's really critical.
We had, we had our HR come in and talk about what are the requirements of teaching. And then we probably had about a dozen or so faculty talk about why do I teach? And you heard those stories about, you know, I do this, yes, you know, I make a little extra money, but I see the impact on students, or, you know, I've had this graduate. So we had this whole event for them that night. We had about 40-ish, 45 people show up from across probably about 20 disciplines. So not, I mean, we were happy with that number. And we've gotten some hires out of it. And they look, of course, we did this, their first classes will be this fall, but they were people that a lot of times we wouldn't have had coming on board unless we'd done something special like that.
One, I think that online application process can be really daunting. I know when I applied to MATC, it took me hours to get all this. This is terrible. And, you know, I see all my students applying for jobs and the process they have to go through. My spouse, the same thing. It takes a half day plus to apply for a job, only to never hear back from them.
Yeah, we just had
It's crazy.
We just hired a new faculty member, and through the process, I think half the applicants were lost in the cracks because of the daunting application process, because they didn't put a check boxes somewhere, or, you know, something simple, but it's...
That's the other aspect of it. I've had numerous students apply for jobs at MATC, and they didn't even get interviews. I'm thinking to myself, and then I know who they hired, who's infinitely lower on the totem pole in knowledge and understanding what they need to do. And they didn't even look at my student. I don't understand that. So it's probably got to do with that application process, man. They're not quite writing the right thing down or checking the correct boxes. And they need to have some education on how to do that. So
I think if we had somebody show any interest, we'd lead them by the hand through the application process. Our problem is we can't find anybody who even wants to.
yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just getting past that whole, you know, problem of getting an applicant at all.
Yeah.
Maybe that kind of job fair
Yeah,
thing.
good. You know, it's a little bit different, but I was, a couple of years ago, I was on a committee where we were, it's kind of funny, we were hiring a guy from Johnson Controls to actually become part of our facility staff. Because we were sick and, because facility people were sick and tired of seeing those trucks in front of the plant building every day.
Yeah.
So they said, you know, we can hire somebody and make those trucks go away. And, but anyway, so we, you know, and I could give you a number. He was hired at a rate of $28 an hour. But, you know, what some of these guys like is they get tired. They were older people, and they kind of get tired of bouncing around on the truck, going from here, there, and everywhere. So that was an attractive feature for this guy to be hired. But then I also want to say that I said, oh, this is really good, because we've got this other, you know, we've got this ALC system. He'll probably be able to do some input. So I'm good buddies with the director of facilities, and I said, hey, why don't you let me take this guy into the classroom for a little bit. He could, you know, show us, we'll punch up the system, and he could, it's not his real expertise, but he's been in the business for, you know, over 25 years. He should know something. And he was terrible.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, you're like, oh, no, never again, you know, monotone.
That's not good.
Look at the thing, go, oh, I don't know. But he was a good technician. I was like, he worked and he kept the trucks away. So I knew what he was doing. But he was worthless as a teacher. He was absolutely worthless.
Yeah, so you said $28 an hour, so that's $56,000 a year.
Right.
So, it's not a lot of money for somebody with 25-something years experience.
Yeah, but you know, he'd be looking at, you know, basically retiring, and he's in a different field now, so, you know, how he's getting his pension and all that kind of stuff, so, you know, I'm not crying for him, but that kind of thing. But, you know, you might find somebody like that and say, I'm gonna make him into a teacher, And you find out that, no, you're not gonna make them into a teacher.
The thought I have on this is, you mentioned the apprenticeship model, which is my background, as you know.
Yeah.
And essentially what MATC did is they partnered with various labor unions, but it could even be with industry, for example, ECAM's very much tied in with JCI, for example. And kind of what I'm getting at is these other entities who are helping steer the program through advisory committees and whatnot, they do have some say as to who they want for instructors. There might be another pool where they know of individuals and they would send them. That's kind of how I ended up at MATC, was my labor union said, we want Dave to be the instructor, and through the partnership of the JATC and MATC, here I am.
So I have the sheet metal union to blame for that. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Just try to get rid of me, Tad.
No, but I think that's a good idea. I do.
I'm kind of at a rock my hard place. I mean, they've asked me to teach a day and night class at the same time. I don't think I'll be able to do it. And so we're looking for an adjunct, but our unique situation in my state, I'm in a situation where most of my program completers are more knowledgeable than the journeymen that they'll be working for. So
That's interesting.
I almost have to, just so I can get someone with at least some social skills and some kind of technical ability that wasn't just trial and error on the job. I look at the base quite a bit, the military installation there.
Yeah.
For adjuncts, but it's difficult because you almost have to wait till someone has a retirement under their belt already to attract them to you. But then it's catch as catch can whether or not they'll have the skills necessary to be a good instructor. Like you said, over there they didn't have the teaching ability, and I do have one adjunct that's like that. I have to be in the classroom with them. And I kind of use them as an extra pair of eyes because I have a class too big for one person to keep an eye on people to keep them from electrocuting themselves. So I have them in there as an extra pair of eyes, but if I leave them alone in the classroom, they'll probably find some way to do themselves in or something because he's like.
I have an adjunct like that too, and I haven't utilized him in years for that reason, is that he just can't teach.
My best adjunct is this guy who did 30 years with the power company as a gas technician, as a fuel technician, and he's retired, does whatever he wants, and he travels the world. He has a really good retirement, much better than mine, and I'll say, hey, can you teach mechanical piping for the next 8 weeks? He says, oh yeah, I got some time, I'll do it. And he just stays on the payroll, but he just comes in whenever he wants to teach the class. He's really easy to work with.
So, Robert?
This idea definitely won't help with the curriculum development for those of us who are in the process of trying to come up with curriculum. But would it be a practical idea to take somebody who we know is a good teacher, who has some mechanical background or IT background, and teach them building automation systems? I mean, I know a lot of us have spent a lot of time in the industry learning it, and in a lot of cases by trial and error on our end or on the job market.
Well, that's definitely a consideration, because I don't know, the instructors that we have that we're considering, they necessarily have a good, strong DDC background, but I thought we'd probably be having to train them a little bit more on it, but we know they have a mechanical background.
But that way you're starting off with
What's that?
somebody.
I'm sitting right here, Ted.
I was thinking others, Dave.
Oh.
At least in that situation, you're starting off with somebody who's already, unfortunately, probably at a somewhat depressed income level. So
Yeah.
you're not trying to steal them away from a very lucrative position. You're
Right.
just adding to their skill set in existing world order.
I think the fact of the matter is no matter who you bring in, most likely we're gonna have to do some training, right? Or they're gonna have to get some extra training. I know, if I'm gonna be teaching any of the DDC programs, Dave and I talked about this, I'd have to get up to snuff on it. So there's gonna be that level, a certain amount of training you have to do to get to the point of being able to teach some of this stuff. I think.
Maybe that's an opportunity for the Best Center as well.
Maybe.
I'll just retire, become the adjunct, and let somebody else fill the full time.
What's that?
Me, I'll just retire, become the adjunct, and let somebody else fill the full time.
All right, Russ.
Our problem is, I don't have problems finding adjuncts.
You know what?
I said, particularly I don't have problems finding adjuncts to come in and teach. But what the problem is they've cut the hours down where they used to teach 20 contact hours. Now they can only teach 12 contact hours because of the full-time, quote, load that they can teach. So and those adjuncts don't want to teach just 12 hours. And so it's hard to find adjuncts to fill in that other part of time that we don't have there. Now, I can find adjuncts to teach the HVAC side field of it. There's plenty of those out there. And so that's putting all the BA, the building automation stuff on me.
Do other people run into that problem with the adjuncts want to teach more hours than they're allowed to teach by contract or whatever?
Well, not even by contract, they got the Obamacare thing.
Yeah, that's
They
what
get
it
paid
is.
hours. Otherwise, then they're medical. They have to pay the medical.
You're full-time? So some of those restrictions.
Yeah, see, I think that's a big problem that probably all of us have, is because the contact hours they could teach have been cut way down.
Huh. Okay. I wasn't aware of that, we had that issue, but
Well,
if it's related to health insurance, I'm sure we do that.
Yeah, the associate dean make it real clear, you know, they want no more than 11 hours is the magic number.
You know? I thought that was due to other reasons, but.
When you say 11 or 12 hours, is that, help me understand better, is that
So those are contact hours a week.
In the classroom.
in the class?
In the classroom.
So that's not, it may or may not be 12 credits.
We have 19.
Probably in our programs it's much less.
Well, like one of my class is a 5 credit hour class, but it's a 10 contact hour class. So there's one class and he's got 2 hours that he needs out. Because all my other classes are over 2 hours. So that just puts him out, and when he looks at that, you know, I had a real good one. He worked part-time out in the field, and he worked 20 hours with me teaching.
Yeah.
And so that's how he made his living, and now they cut it down, and I'm about to lose him again.
Yeah, we have the
So we have a definite problem with restriction on the number of hours in adjunct. So that's going to
And
really
full-time.
affect this medical.
And we have a restriction with the percentage of faculty versus full-time that you can have. You couldn't have one full-time and 20 adjuncts.